Blessed day, soul family. Welcome back. Martial Mystic 2026. Today is Wednesday. So if you haven't gotten familiar with it, we are looking at Wellness Wednesday. Remember, there are eight dimensions of wellness. And can you remember them all? Let's see if I certainly can't. But there's physical, emotional, social, spiritual, occupational, environmental, and financial. You might be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's also, a familiar framework, a an example of a framework to have a sense or have an idea of how one can attain sort of a holistic sense of well-being. So today, we're going to be talking about a few things. I'm interested to get your thoughts on what we're talking about. So, we'll be looking at spring as the weather is starting to turn. What does it mean? Um, what is the um, organ associated with it? And then we'll look at some of the movements and Qigong. What I want to focus on mostly is the concept of war is medicine and eating bitter. And we're going to dive into that, and I'll show you some historical concepts and terms that came up where, if you will, a war was used as somewhat of a social vaccine to help calm the fire of inflamed rhetoric or tensions that could lead to conflict or war. So I want to start with this reading here. It comes from my teacher's book. Yesterday we talked about the four stages to enlightenment and liberation, and um, we're going to continue to follow that thread and uh, look at how we can extrapolate a little bit more to understand. And kind of what we're focusing on is emotional bondage, as my teacher describes emotional bondage, freedom of mental bondage, emotional bondage, and spiritual bondage for enlightenment. And we'll as the week goes through, we'll talk a little bit more how we make this real and applicable. So let's look at the thesis of Buddha ground. Okay. All laws and all manifestations of nature can bloom and be awakened by themselves. We can also bloom and be awakened from emotional bondage, like being awakened from sleep and like the blooming of the lotus flower. This is called Buddha. The Buddhists were, we are, to Buddhists, we are born and grow in emotional mud, Chen Tu, human matrix. We create dignity, glory, pride, happiness, sadness, jealousy, and desire. We lie and cover our faces with masks, and we all experience significant spiritual pain living in this human matrix. The mud makes us blind and deaf, and nothing is clear in our minds. The conscious mind is active while the subconscious Shen or spirit is asleep. We are dreaming in the human matrix and not awakening. Nevertheless, each of us has a lotus seed, our original spirit. Through meditation, it buds and grows from deep in the mud. The subconscious mind grows, and after long practice, the lotus flower emerges from the matrix, and you see everything clearly. To awaken your spirit, bring all thoughts to your Shen, your upper energy center, the upper Dantian, and keep the Shen there. This upper Dantian or spiritual mountain, Ling San, in which there is the spiritual valley, is where the valley spirit lives. Remember the song which says, "Do not search far for Buddha, since he is in the spiritual mountain." And where is the spiritual mountain? It's in your mind. It's in your upper dantian. And actually, last week on Mental Health Monday, we did a little deep dive into the upper dantian as the spiritual residence and the spiritual center. So I wanted to share that with you in terms of the mud and and tomorrow in Resolution Thursday, we're going to talk about the emotional bondage as mental phenomena that can arise, and then some real ways that we can calm down that fire. So we're equating this emotional bondage, and if you agree to the notion, if you agree to the notion that war can bring about emotional pain and trauma, then we want to look at how bitterness can can play a role. So we need to understand what bitterness is in Chinese medicine. Chirku. Okay. Here's a short video of this. Oh, what happened?
吃不吃，没吃，
So
吃了
she's teaching she's teaching some Mandarin, but that's not the one that I wanted. The one that I wanted, I think I kind of lost it. I don't know why. Let me see if I can go back. Anyways, okay. Well, let me just go to this. Chirku, eating bitterness, willingness to endure hardship for future gain. So in Chinese culture, eating bitterness is a core virtue, and it refers to the ability to preserve through hardship and suffering without complaint. Yesterday, I talked a little bit about it, how you have the real experience of eating bitter greens, and we're going to look at why that's important. And especially as we're coming into spring, and then also, eating bitterness is the ability to take criticism and correction from your teacher. So in Gong Fu, the ability to take that correction and swallow bitter, even if it's hard to hear, you take that correction in and you apply it for the betterment of your learning practice and skill development, right? So it signifies a stoic mindset of gritting one's teeth through physical or emotional labor, like working long hours or enduring difficulty, living conditions, what have you. But there's also the idea of bitter first, sweet later. And it's eating the bitter parts of life before we can taste the sweet reward. And it's also seen as a measure of one's character, especially in Chinese culture. So parents frequently use the phrase to encourage resilience in their children or to frame their own sacrifices as a virtue. And in martial arts and kung fu training, it refers to the grueling, repetitive, and painful physical labor required to achieve true skill, becoming one with one's body or becoming one with one's paintbrush or one's staff or sword, what have you. If a practitioner hasn't eaten bitter, they haven't truly earned their mastery. So we see there this aspect of yin and yang that comes in, where you can be with the mud, but you have an idea and a vision for the lotus that will blossom. And only you can pull yourself out of the mud with step by step, repetitive showing up and continuing to do the work and put the work in. So, of course, there are some critiques amongst younger generations, mental health professionals, just to try to keep this balanced in terms of internalizing pain or submissiveness, because it can lead to somatization where emotional distress is ignored and instead manifests as physical ailments like insomnia or chronic pain. That's really key too, because we have to have that balance. So I would say like the rigor and the bitterness has to be balanced with, yeah, micro doses of sweetness, right? And critics argue that sucking it up can discourage people from advocating for themselves or standing up against workplace exploitation and social injustice. And I agree with that too. So we also have to learn how to advocate for our own needs and be in tune and be conscious. And that's what the reading speaks to as well in terms of freeing ourselves from emotional bondage. Remember the four um, stages to liberation were self recognition, self awareness, and then awakening, and then the liberation from bondage. Um, Refer to yesterday's video in case I have that mixed up, but it's pretty much in line. So, what's the function of bitterness within food and in traditional TCM? And it's interesting because it speaks to the spring and we are coming into spring, so we need to be conscious and aware and up to speed if we want to maintain holistic wellness. So spring is a time of upward and outward movement. There's that bloom, there's the seed that's sprouting. There's a lot of young, vibrant potential energy, right? That's why we like to eat sprouts. Sprouts have that vitality in them. The energy hasn't fully manifested, but it's a lot of it is activating. So we want to eat sprouts. That's really good. And this mirrors the liver's function, this upward and outward movement, ensuring the smooth flow of qi. When liver becomes excessive or stagnant, this leads to irritability, headaches, and digestive issues, just to name a few. But for the most part, we like to look at irritability, anger, frustration as signs of liver fire, is what we say. Bitter flavors can help clear heat, drain dampness, and promote detoxification. So that's why bitter greens are important. You know, interestingly, I'm not sure what you feel um, about the image, but in today's image we have a bitter melon. If you've ever had bitter melon, whoa! So here's the bitter melon here, right? Um, but let's be conscious and aware of the bitterness of war, right? And let's use that to align and center ourselves to the real bitter uh, aspects of life and living in this earth realm, in this earth school. So bitter herbs and foods like dandelion greens, chrysanthemum, romaine lettuce, they help cool and regulate the liver fire, making them particularly beneficial in the springtime. And so for me here in this area that I live in, a lot of people are connected to their gardens, to some seasonal farming in some form or fashion. Um, I live in marijuana country, Humboldt County. And so a lot of people grow their own and they become really connected to their own herbs, vegetables, fruit in that way. And so they understand and have the idea of when you coming into spring, oh gosh, there's a lot of work ahead, or, you know, um, prepping soil, planting seeds, watering, monitoring, transplanting, continuing to monitor, um, nutrient uh, placement and addition, and then this all the so once it starts, it peaks in the summer, and then it falls in the fall and in the winter, right? So we have this yin yang cycle, and this I speak to because this is in contrast to, let's say, a 9 to 5 sort of corporate career or idea where you're just you're expected to show up every day of the year and put the same energy from 9 to 5, despite the seasonal differences where in the fall and the winter, your energy is actually contracting or wants to contract and it wants to hibernate. And then in the spring, it wants to bloom. Summer, it wants to blossom and peak. So just keeping that in mind. Now, there's several seasonal factors that affect the process of growth and movement. So, winter residue and slow transition. After a season of stillness and inward energy, the sudden shift upward, that liver energy, expansive energy, can be jarring for people. And if there's winter heaviness, there's sluggishness, there's slow metabolism, um, if the food isn't right or if there's not enough movement, the liver can struggle to activate its energy to bloom freely. So yesterday we talked about energy meridian cleaning and vessel flushing in terms of the channels being open and doing our best to mitigate blockage of the channels. So understanding this can help to do that. So there's also increased emotional sensitivity. The liver is closely tied to emotional regulation, particularly anger, frustration, irritability. As the world around speeds up, or as we have now, active war, possibly the the uh, the seedlings for global war, the um, we're closest that we've ever been to midnight in terms of the clock. I forget what it's called, but so there's potential for emotional stagnation if the body and the mind aren't adjusting smoothly, right? And this is the energy that comes up when you're outside and you're trying to unroll your water hose, or you're trying to, you're shoveling dirt or something, or you're getting a wood pile, and you just have this irritability that arises. Maybe you come into something that's not just budging or giving way as you would expect it to, and that can activate liver energy, because liver's energy is the doing, getting done, and um, completion energy. But if we hit blockage or stagnation, it can disrupt our and stimulate our irritability and other emotions. So spring naturally encourages us to detoxify, and if the diet remains too heavy or it lacks bitter, our sour foods support liver stagnation, or they support liver movement. But if we don't have that, stagnation can set in. So we don't want to eat rich foods, greasy foods, processed foods, because they can just overload the liver and they just make it harder for you to show up, I would say. And then if you don't have if you don't have good movement that supports the liver, from hibernation to spring, then the stress can lead to physical stagnation. You can get stuck resulting in symptoms like bloating, PMS, or tightness in the shoulders or the neck. So, with that, let's look at some movements. We're going to go to my partner here, and she's going to explain the winter in a little bit more I'm sorry, the spring in a little bit more detail.
And I'm here to speak to you today about Four Seasons Qigong Spring Set. The spring set is a set that's designed to take care of the liver. The liver resides on mostly on the right side, tucked underneath the rib cage, but extending lower as well, and is the size of the football. So it's one of your largest organs. That's the skin is your largest organ, but the liver is the largest whole-bodied organ, and it does extend to the left side slightly as well. So there's a thin part to the left, and then a lot of it sits to the right. The liver is known as the get things done organ. So during this time of spring, as we move away from a more sedentary time of winter, the liver ramps up its activity as we ramp up our activity as the weather gets warmer and we start to get more active. Traditionally, this is when we would be getting outdoors and planting our gardens and prepping for the good weather to come. And so a lot of these movements in this very simple, short 4-piece set involves opening and compressing the area around the liver, including left-right action and some twisting, as well as bend down in order to really get deep into that large organ here. We then finish with some massage and massage of the eyes, which is the external expression of the organ system. And hope you enjoy this set that's designed to help the liver, which is the element of the wood, time of growth, a time of spring, and steady movement. Enjoy.
So that starts to go into the movements which are available on our channel. Gonna stop that. But what I want to go to now is we've outlined the concept of bitter and we've talked about war, a little bit about emotional bondage and the mud. And I want to read something again from Dr. Young's book. Um, but we're going to talk about war and conflict prevention, exploring the social bitter medicine metaphor. But let's first hear from, again, the same book, the red label Qigong Meditation, Small Circulation. So, we humans, in order to survive in this harsh reality of this world, lie and trick each other. Truth within is hidden behind the mask we wear, decorated with glory, dignity, and honor, which are tools to enslave the souls and the bodies of others. Lust for wealth and power has become the common core education for the next generation. A human emotional matrix has been created, and all of us suffer within it. To escape from this matrix, first awaken deep in your heart. With a neutral and open mind, see through the matrix that we have created. The truth should always be in your mind, else the search for the Tao will be in vain. So, with that, let's now look at the concept of war, bitterness, social vaccine, if you will, for the prevention, because in TCM, we we want to prevent disease, illness, and stagnation in the energetics, in the energetic realm first, before it manifests into the physical tissues. Okay. So through our in introspection and interoception, we have a deep relationship through feeling to feel, sense, and discern what we need to change. When we have symptoms arise in the body, when it comes to vitality and rehabilitation, we use those messages to formulate and describe the movement that we need to do. If the back or the neck hurts, then that's going to dictate the movement that we need to do to harmonize with that situation. If the knee or the ankle joints are in pain, then we have to inspect it and explore it to harmonize with the pain there and see what the messages are. In that same way, when we see war on the planet, we have a duty and a responsibility to use it as a lesson. In the same way, when we're in a martial arts class and we're all holding a posture and a position, and the teacher gives a correction to one student, you make that correction or double check that correction in yourself, right? With the yin and yang of technology, we're getting bombarded with the harsh realities of existence and war. But at the same time, now we have the ability to learn and discern how we want to propagate peace in our spheres of influence. So, if we apply the TCM framework of eating bitterness to the social political body, then we have some parallels that emerge. The clearing of heat, bitter as a down bearing force, a down regulating force, and then also speaking bitterness, communication, and sharing of trauma, and then the risk of this overdosing, too much war. What can be the cost of that? So, in terms of clearing the heat, right? We're looking at this number one, clearing the social heat and fever. You can see the brain on fire there, right? You can see the angry soldier there. Conflict as a fever, war as a manifestation of that fever, where propaganda, nationalistic aggression are like the heat and the fire. The bitterness is witnessing war's reality and needing to clear this heat to cool the collective mania. Witnessing reality gives us the opportunity to cool the system. So, the bitter reality of war, loss of life, displacement, trauma, this can serve as that cool collective um, antidote, and that can help to center society to see the cost of aggression so as in the future to um, prepare f- prepare and mitigate further conflict and war. Number two, we're looking at the down bearing force, the yin, right? To balance the yang fever. The in Qigong, we we use breathing and other relaxation techniques to down regulate the nervous system, to stimulate the parasympathetic rest and digest response in the body. And then we do our Qigong, even Gong Fu practices from this relaxed state. But the relaxation is the foundation, it's the key. So bitterness has that descending energy, pulling down and away. The ascending, uh, so conflict often stems from ascending idealism, right? Detached geopolitical theory, detached from the concept of unity, oneness, and soul uh, humanity. The bitterness of war grounds these abstractions in physical reality. It forces a population to descend from the high of rhetoric to the low of the graveyard, right? And the graveyard's truth. From ideals to the graveyard reality, right? Understanding this and knowing this and moving forward with this and informing and educating the generations hereafter, we can activate that preventative energy, right? Now the power of speaking bitterness. So this is something I wasn't aware of. Um, uh, Suku. Suku is the sharing of ideas. Um, And historically, the practice of speaking bitterness, suku, was used to transform private trauma into collective force, specifically in the, let's see here, um, the political movement during Chinese land reform and other Maoist era campaigns. Suku was a formalized practice where peasants and workers publicly recounted their past suffering under the old society to build revolutionary class and consciousness. So, this was also to recall the past, and it was a helping to mobilize the masses. So, it, it, I guess it was, let's see, it was often paired with recalling the past bitterness to appreciate the present sweetness, a method used to emphasize the improvements brought by the Communist Party. So, we have to take this with a grain of salt, this idea of suku. Um, but I guess we have to be able to uh, appropriately discern, right? When veterans or refugees, other survivors share their stories, they feed that bitter medicine of their experience back to the social body. If a society refuses to eat this bitterness by either censoring or glorifying war, it loses the ability to prevent the illness in the next conflict, right? Lastly, number four, the risks of overdosing or toxicity, being exposed to too much war. Because TCM warns us that too much bitterness can deplete the blood and the yin. Constant exposure of bitterness of war can lead to desensitization. The social body stops reacting to the medicine altogether. I once met a Special Forces Green Beret who was decorated and spent time in the war in Afghanistan, and he had to relearn and reteach his brain how to access the love, what he called the love part of his brain, the anterior cingulate, because he had turned it off for so long, being able to do all of the killing that he did. And cynicism is where bitterness is so overwhelming that it destroys the hope that's necessary to build a peaceful future. So we can't let the war that's happening kill our spirit. We can't. We have to do all the things that we need to prevent depression and just clamshelling and contraction, dance, music, singing, friends, um, gratitude and appreciation of the things that we have. So, so in conclusion, the TCM, a formula that's rarely just one herb um, uh, to prevent illness, and in this case, conflict. The bitter is witnessing the pain, but that has to be balanced with sour, nourishing the liver, patience to see the peaceful vision. And remember, going back to the myriad of 10,000 things, all our conflicts back at Wuji, our destination, all our conflicts are resolved. All wars cease. All war doesn't even exist. It's only in this realm that it exists, possibly to teach us appreciation, love. Remember, yesterday we referred to guiding each other home. The all the rifts, the tensions, the conflicts, the wars, and even the interpersonal friendship, familial, co-worker conflicts are teaching us, showing us where love is, right? And reminding us we're just in Earth School together, guiding each other home. So that's what I have for you today. Um, Wellness and Wellness Wednesday. So we'll continue with this idea of what's it called? uh relationship, qigong of relationship. That's a little bit of a, not an oxymoron, but um a little bit of the same word. Is that the same thing? I think oxymorons are opposite. I can't remember. Whew, it's getting late. So I think that's it. Tomorrow we'll go a little bit deeper in resolution Thursday. So really appreciate your time, your energy. If you'd like to hear more, contact me. Remember, you can go to yinyangtaichi.org, yinyangtaichi.org, and you can find us here. You can find courses, um, short ebooks, and even book a call so that you can have a 30-minute consultation and we can put all these things together for you with regard to what you're struggling with and what you'd like to have help with in these times. So, again, may your chi flow smoothly and remember to embrace the woo.